Thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to be telling you about SureChEMBL, which provides access to patent data hosted in the cloud. So firstly, just a little bit about the institute where I work. So I'm based at somewhere called ChEMBL EBI, which is the European Bioinformatics Institute. And this is a non-profit organization based just south of Cambridge here in the UK. We have a number of mission statements, the most important of which is essentially delivering biological data and services to all facets of the research community. We also strive to deliver cutting-edge computer technologies to industry and provide training on all the data and services we make available. We also are home to a number of groups who are focused on specific areas of biological sciences, and these range from proteins and genes through to drugs and small molecules. And this comes on to the group that I work in. I'm based in a group at the EBI called the ChEMBL group. And what we do is provide data for drug discovery. At its core, we extract facts and information from the scientific literature, capture these entities, so these could be drugs or small molecules, it could be the targets they interact with in the human body, and we capture all of this in a large database known as the ChEMBL database. We make this database publicly available, and then we and our users are then able to build applications, tools, gain insights, essentially all aimed at assisting drug discovery research and advancement. And who uses our data? Well, we estimate somewhere in the region of about 10,000 organizations around the world probably use our data. And over the last 4 to 5 years, we've collaborated with a number of large pharmaceutical companies, been involved in some large EU projects, worked with a number of academic research groups, and also worked with groups focused on neglected diseases such as malaria with the Medicines for Malaria venture. But moving on to patent data. So patent data and drug discovery. So historically, this has been very much a closed and costly resource, data source to get hold of and out of reach of many academics and SMEs. The reason why it's important is considered to be 2 to 3 years ahead of the published literature, which is the bulk of the data that goes into our ChEMBL database. And when you have access to this data, it allows you to ask questions, essentially about your research regarding prior art, freedom to operate. It allows you to understand what your competitors are doing, but what it's really giving you is access to lots more data. But this comes normally at a cost of high extraction costs and potentially introduces a lot of noise to the system. So this is where SureChEMBL comes in. So at the end of last year, ChEMBL EBI, the institute where I'm based, acquired the SureChEMBL system. And this was a leading chemistry patent mining tool developed by Digital Science, which is part of the Macmillan Group. And upon acquiring it, we underwent the process of turning this from a commercial product into an open product, free for all. And this transition was a perfect fit both for us in the ChEMBL group and in ChEMBL EBI, as we wanted to give provide access to patent data, and for Digital Science, who no longer saw this product as part of their future business plan. We rebranded it SureChEMBL and then started the process of migrating the resources over to ChEMBL EBI-controlled resources. And this is where the challenge really started for us. So at ChEMBL EBI, we have access to a large amount of computer resources, but the SureChEMBL system was developed, written, and optimized to run on AWS. So essentially, the question we're faced is, should we migrate the system onto our own ChEMBL EBI-controlled resources or migrate within AWS? And there was a number of considerations to take into account when making this decision. So it was a live system, continually updating with many dependencies. Had a very complex data processing pipeline under it. There was existing customers, and there's a large user base as well. And we wanted to ensure there was no downtime during the migration process. We had a very short timescale, limited resources, fairly limited budget, and at the time of carrying out this migration, we had to assess our own AWS experience. So if we could actually manage this and run the system in an AWS environment. So when we thought about all of these various considerations, we came to the conclusion that essentially staying with AWS was the best way forward for this in this particular project. And now the SureChEMBL system has been migrated and is running in an AWS environment. And what it gives you, so this is a quick overview of the system, it's a user interface built on top of an API, and in its simplest form, you can do a keyword search against the literature. But you can also, more powerfully, do chemistry-based searches to search for the chemicals that appear in patents and apply complex filters and get access to the underlying patents and the chemistry. And this can all be downloaded and processed. And you can access it with the www.SureChEMBL.org. But under the hood, what are we using? So we're using many EC2 instances, and these are running within a virtual private cloud. We're using an elastic load balancer to handle our incoming traffic on our UI and API boxes. In our data processing pipeline, we use SQS to handle messages going backwards and forwards. We have a lot of storage, so we're using S3 for some of our temporary storage, and we have a number of volumes, EBS volumes attached to all our instances, and also making use of snapshots and backups. We use some of the utility services, such as CloudWatch for monitoring, and IAM for managing our user accounts. And though we've had limited experience, we've been able to essentially identify a number of benefits throughout this migration process. And to me, at least, the clearest one is AWS has provided us with the comprehensive suite of tools and services to carry out this migration. And with my developer hat on, essentially, everything is just there, which I've expected to be there to build this system. It's allowed us to prototype very quickly. So we can quickly design, build, and deploy a system, and then if it's not working, tear it down. And once we've got our code deployed, restart again. The console, the AWS web interface, we found this really useful as well. It's given us an overview. It provides us with an overview of all the services that are up and running. It allows us to review our costs very easily. But we also like programmatic access, so we can automate tasks and monitor the systems more easily. So making use of the command line interface and SDKs are great. And on the side of monitoring, making use of the CloudWatch alarms are really good. Very simple to implement. So we can monitor our queues, making sure messages are being processed and not hanging around on queues for too long, and ensuring that our UI boxes and API boxes are up and running. And if something is going wrong, we get informed quickly and know how to address the situation. Cost calculator has been really useful for us to predict what our costs will be pretty accurately when we look to provision a new resource. And AWS is continuously providing us with new services, which we're always keen to find out about and use possibly in the future to help optimize the system. And finally, support's also been excellent. So we talk to either our account managers, solution architects, online forums, or email forums. We've had very fast responses and accurate information returned to us, which has helped us move along. So again, just based on our limited experience, just some recommendations based on our migration. So make use of the excellent online documentation. There's many white papers and best practice guides available. If you are going to migrate a system, use the virtual private cloud to architect it with. You might need to refresh some of your network knowledge, and migrating from a sort of classic EC2 can be tricky. So start off with the virtual private cloud. If you need to review your costs, use the cost calculator. It's a great way to estimate how much you will be spending potentially when you do fill in a new resource. And we've also benefited from using reserved instances to reduce our cost burden, as we know for a fact we'll be using certain resources for 1 year or 3 years. For us, in our particular situation, we had a lot of storage contributing to our costs, so reviewing this, so things like RAIDs, backups, snapshots being taken, just ensuring that we had the right amount of storage for the system. And finally, when we're not using resources, we'll make sure they're shut down. So there's some quite expensive development API boxes running. So when these aren't being used, we make sure they're shut down. And finally, on the recommendation, just be prepared for unexpected events. And a recent learning is just keep an eye on the events section in the EC2 dashboard. This provides you information on potential maintenance windows which will be occurring with various services. So in conclusion, we successfully completed the migration of the SureChEMBL system over the summer of this year and officially released the website on the 19th of September, so just over a month ago. And this is thanks very much in part to the ease of use of the AWS services and the range of services that's been made available. And now we're ready to move forward and look to introduce new services in the coming year. So just to wrap up, we have some acknowledgements. So the ChEMBL group, who I work with, the digital science guys who are very much involved, Nico, James, and Richard, our funders and technology partners. And thank you for listening.